I flew 2,300 miles with a brand new team jersey in my carry-on and $187,400 of my dead husband's life insurance still burning a hole in my savings account, only to hear my own daughter-in-law tell a national TV crew that I was a delusional fan who needed to be removed from the stadium before my son's championship final. Security had my arms behind my back before the kickoff whistle even blew. What they didn't know was that every dollar that had kept my son on that pitch for the last 9 years had my name on the wire transfer, and I still had every receipt. The concrete tunnel under the stadium smelled like damp concrete and stale popcorn. My orthopedic shoes squeaked against the floor as 2 security guards marched me toward the exit like I was some kind of threat. One of them kept muttering into his radio. "We've got the elderly female, section 112, claiming relation. Over." Elderly female? I was 68, not dead. My knees still remembered every early morning I drove Tyler to practice when he was 12, before the talent scout started circling. I didn't fight them. I didn't cry. I just looked straight ahead while the roar of 72,000 fans vibrated through the walls. On the giant screen above the tunnel, I caught a glimpse of my own face. Frozen, pale. The team scarf I'd knitted myself still around my neck. The camera cut away fast, but not fast enough. Millions of people had just watched security drag Tyler Harlan's mother out of his biggest night like she was a crazy groupie. My daughter-in-law's voice still echoed in my head, smooth and professional because she'd been practicing for the sideline reporter gig for months. "Oh, that old woman? She's not family anymore. We told security she's a delusional fan. Please, keep her out of the owner's suite." She'd said it with a little laugh, like it was nothing. Like the woman who had wired $187,400 over 9 years, rent when Tyler was in the academy, flights to away games, the $28,000 knee surgery in Tampa, the $41,000 emergency loan to the club last season so they could make payroll, was suddenly a stranger. I kept walking. Past the gift shop, past the families taking selfies, past the smell of grilled bratwurst. When we reached the outer gate, the taller guard finally let go of my arm. "Ma'am, you need to leave the premises. If you come back, we'll have to involve the police." I looked him in the eye. "I paid for that suite. My name is on the wire transfers that kept this club afloat twice. But you do what you have to do." He blinked, confused. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned and walked into the parking lot where my rental car sat under a flickering sodium light. The game hadn't even started yet. Inside that stadium, my son was warming up, probably high-fiving teammates, probably letting his wife fix his hair for the cameras. And I was out here with a jersey that would never be worn and a heart that finally, after 9 years, felt something colder than disappointment. I sat in the driver's seat for a long minute, hands on the wheel, breathing slow. Then I opened the glove compartment, took out the thick manila folder I'd carried across the country, and laid it on my lap. Bank statements, wire confirmations, email chains, tax records where Tyler had listed me as a business consultant on his Schedule C without ever asking. 2 club loan documents with my forged signature. I had only spotted those last week when I finally demanded full records from my accountant back home. $187,400. Not a gift, not helping family. Loans. Every single cent documented with promissory notes Tyler had signed when he still needed me. Notes he apparently forgot existed the moment the big league check started clearing. I started the engine. The radio came on automatically. The pregame show. I heard the announcer say, "Tyler Harlan looking sharp tonight, folks. Big things expected from the hometown kid." Then the sideline reporter cut in with a bright voice. "And we just spoke with his wife, Brooke, who says the family is all here to support him. What a night!" I turned the radio off. 9 years ago, my husband Frank died of a heart attack on his fishing boat. Left me the house, a small pension, and a $212,000 life insurance policy. Tyler was 23, freshly cut from his first pro tryout, crying in my kitchen about how he'd never make it without 1 more year of training. I wrote the first check that night, $4,800 for a private coach in California. I told myself it was an investment in my only child's dream. I told myself Frank would have wanted it. I never stopped writing checks. When Tyler tore his meniscus, I flew out and paid the surgeon. When his car got repossessed, I wired the money to get it back. When Brooke, the influencer with the perfect smile, decided they needed a downtown condo with a view of the pitch, I co-signed and covered the down payment. Every time Tyler called, voice cracking, saying, "Mom, just this once," I transferred the money before I even hung up. I ate store-brand cereal for dinner so many nights I stopped tasting it. I canceled my own doctor appointments when the co-pays got too high. I sold Frank's beloved fishing boat, the one he'd restored with his own hands, for $19,000 and sent every penny to Tyler's agent fees. And tonight, while 72,000 people cheered his name, Brooke had looked into a national camera and called me a delusional fan. I drove to the cheapest motel I could find near the airport, checked in under my maiden name, and sat on the stiff bed with my folder open. I took out my phone and dialed my old accountant, Harold, even though it was after midnight back east. He picked up on the second ring. "Maggie, you okay?" "The game's on TV right now. I saw something weird in the tunnel." "I need you to pull every record we have on Tyler and the club," I said, voice steady. "Every wire, every email. And Harold, start flagging anything that looks like forgery. Because I think my signature ended up on 2 club loan papers I never saw." Silence on the line. Then Harold exhaled. "Jesus, Maggie. You want me to call the forensic guy we used for the estate?" "Yes, and find me an attorney who specializes in elder financial abuse and fraud. I don't want to yell. I don't want a scene. I want the money back. Every cent. With interest." I could hear him typing already. "You sure about this? He's your son." I looked at the folder, at the neat columns of numbers I'd tracked for 9 years, like a bookkeeper who never got paid. He stopped being my son the moment he let security put hands on me in front of the whole country, I said. Now he's just a debtor. And I'm done being the bank. Harold was quiet for a second. "I'll have a preliminary report by morning. Get some sleep, Maggie." I hung up, lay back on the motel pillow that smelled like old cigarettes, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. For the first time in 9 years, my hands weren't shaking with worry about Tyler's next crisis. They were steady. Outside, fireworks from the stadium lit up the sky, probably celebrating a goal or a big play. I didn't turn on the TV to check. I didn't need to. The game had already started without me. And tomorrow, the real match would begin. I woke up before the motel alarm, the way I had for 9 straight years whenever Tyler had an early training session or a flight to catch. Only this time, there was no frantic packing of protein bars or rushing to the bank for another wire. Just the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the thick folder still open on the nightstand. I made terrible coffee in the little machine. Black, no sugar, the same way Frank used to drink it on the boat. Then I sat at the wobbly table and opened my laptop. Harold had already emailed the first batch of records at 4:17 a.m. his time. Spreadsheets, scanned checks, wire confirmations with my routing numbers highlighted in yellow, and 2 loan agreements from the club, the ones I'd never signed. I zoomed in on the signatures. My name, Margaret E. Harlan, written in a slightly shaky hand that almost looked like mine. Almost. The notary stamp was from a title company in the same building where Brooke had her content creator office. Coincidence, I was sure. Total outlay, $187,400. Broken down in cold black and white. $68,200 in private coaching and academy fees. $41,000 emergency club payroll loans. Both times the team was days from missing checks. $28,000 knee surgery and 6 months of rehab in Tampa. $19,000 down payment on the downtown condo. $12,400 in travel. Flights, hotels, rental cars, so I could watch him play. $11,800 in miscellaneous. Agent fees, equipment, the time Brooke needed emergency veneers before a brand deal. $6,000 in interest I never charged but should have. Every transfer had started with a phone call. Tyler's voice tight with panic. "Mom, if this doesn't come through by Friday, they're cutting me." Or Brooke's smoother version. Maggie, you're literally saving our future right now. We love you so much. I had believed both of them every single time. I closed the laptop and looked at the cheap print of a beach scene on the wall. Frank and I used to talk about retiring near the water. He wanted to fish every morning. I wanted to read books without worrying about the electric bill. Instead, I sold the boat he loved and sent the money west so our son could chase a ball. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Security footage from last night is already online. You okay? Attached was a clip, grainy but clear enough. Me in the tunnel, scarf around my neck, holding the ticket I'd bought with my own debit card. Brooke leaning into the sideline reporter's mic, smiling that polished smile. Oh, that old woman? She's not family anymore. Then the guards moving in. Tyler glancing over, seeing me, then turning back to the pitch like I was someone else's problem. I watched it twice. No tears, just a slow, steady burn in my chest that felt almost clean. I typed back. I'm fine. Starting the paperwork today. Then I blocked the number. I didn't need sympathy. I needed numbers. By 9 a.m., I was in a quiet conference room at a downtown accounting firm Harold had recommended. Across the table sat Daniel Park, forensic accountant, mid-40s, wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of man who spoke in decimals and never raised his voice. Next to him was Elena Vargas, elder law attorney, sharp black suit, the kind of woman who made judges sit up straighter. I slid the folder across the table. Every penny, I said. I want every penny back, plus legal interest, plus whatever penalties the court allows when we prove forgery and fraud. Daniel opened the folder and started flipping. His eyebrows rose once, then settled into professional calm. 9 years. No formal loan agreements on most of it, but the club loans have your purported signature. And the tax filings where your son claimed you as a paid consultant, that's interesting. Elena leaned forward. We can file civil recovery immediately. Conversion, unjust enrichment, breach of implied contract. On the forgery side, we notify the club's compliance officer and the league office. Quietly at first. Then we let the paper trail do the talking. I nodded. No press yet. I don't want this turning into a sob story. I want it to turn into an audit. Daniel tapped his pen. The club received 2 direct wires from you totaling $41,000, labeled Family Loan Repayable. If they treated those as non-repayable gifts on their books, that's falsified financials. League rules are strict about that. Elena smiled without warmth. And if your daughter-in-law facilitated the forgeries while acting as the club's unofficial social media and community liaison, that opens her up personally. We can freeze accounts, request restraining orders on dissipation of assets, the works. I sat back. For the first time since the tunnel, my shoulders felt lighter. I raised that boy alone after his father died, I said quietly. I gave him every chance. Last night he gave me security guards. So now, we do this by the book. My book. We spent the next 3 hours building the timeline. Every transfer, every text message where Tyler promised repayment as soon as the next contract hits, every email from Brooke thanking me for being the best mother-in-law ever, I had saved them all. I had always saved them. At 12:30 p.m., my phone lit up with Tyler's name. I let it ring. Then Brooks. Then Tyler again. I turned the phone face down and kept reading bank statements. By 2 p.m., Elena had drafted the demand letter. Civil suit for $187,400 plus interest plus punitive damages for emotional distress and fraud. Separate notice to the club's general counsel about potential forgery on league documents. And a polite heads up to the IRS about questionable Schedule C filings. I signed every page with the same steady hand I used to use when I wrote those checks. As we walked out of the building, Daniel shook my hand. Most people in your position cry or scream. You're doing math. I respect that. I cried for 9 years, I told him. Now I'm done. My flight home left at 6 p.m. I spent the layover in the airport lounge watching the highlights from last night's game on mute. Tyler had scored the winner in the 87th minute. The crowd went wild. Brooke was on the field hugging him, tears of joy. The perfect wife. Commentators called it a fairy tale night for the hometown hero. I closed the app and opened my banking app instead. I transferred $3,200, the exact amount I had spent on last night's ticket, flight, hotel, and the jersey that would never be worn, from my emergency savings into a new sub-account labeled Recovery Fund. Then I booked a one-way ticket to Portland for next month. Not to visit, to look at small houses near the coast, places with a view of the water Frank never got to see. The plane took off into the night. Below me, the stadium lights were still glowing, probably for post-game celebrations. I leaned my head against the window and spoke to Frank for the first time in years. "I'm sorry I sold the boat, honey, but I think I just bought our future back." The cabin lights dimmed. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow the letters would go out. Tomorrow the real game would start. And this time, I was the one setting the terms. The plane touched down just after midnight. I drove straight home through the quiet streets of our small Ohio town, the same route I'd taken for years whenever I came back from watching Tyler play. Only this time the house felt different, smaller, mine again. I didn't unpack. I went straight to the kitchen table, spread the new documents Elena had emailed me, and opened a fresh legal pad. At the top, I wrote in clear block letters, Recovery, Phase 1. By 7 a.m., the demand letters were printed, signed, and ready for certified mail. One to Tyler and Brooke at the downtown condo, one to the club's general counsel, one to the league office, and a quiet, courtesy copy to the IRS field office with supporting schedules. I drove to the post office before it opened and dropped the envelopes in the blue box like I was mailing Christmas cards. No drama, no tears, just paper and postage and 9 years of receipts finally asking to be answered. The first call came at 9:17 a.m. Tyler. I let it ring 4 times, then answered with the same calm voice I use when I balance the checkbook every month. Margaret Harlan. "Mom, what the hell is this?" His voice cracked with that mix of panic and entitlement I used to soothe with another transfer. "We just got served. Brooke is losing her mind." "You're suing us? For what? Helping your own son?" I sipped my coffee. "Not helping, lending. There are signed promissory notes, bank records, and 2 club loan documents with signatures that aren't mine." Silence. Then Brooke's voice in the background, sharp and high. "She's crazy, Ty. Tell her she's confused. Old people get like this." I didn't raise my voice. "Brooke, if you're on speaker, you should know I recorded the sideline interview last night. The part where you told national television I was a delusional fan. That clip is already saved with timestamp and source. Elena Vargas has it." Tyler tried again, softer now, the tone he used when he needed money. "Mom, come on. It was a misunderstanding. Security overreacted. You know how crazy game days are. We can fix this. Just drop the papers and we'll talk like family." "Family doesn't have security remove their mother from the building she helped pay to keep open," I said. "Family doesn't forge signatures on official loan documents. And family certainly doesn't call the woman who financed 9 years of their life a delusional fan on live television." The papers stay. The money comes back. Every cent plus interest at the statutory rate. Brooke jumped in again. "You're going to ruin his career over a few dollars? After everything we've been through?" $187,400 is not a few dollars, I answered. "It's the difference between me eating canned soup for dinner and you posting pictures of $400 steak dinners on Instagram. The career was built on my checks. Now it's time to settle the account." Tyler's breathing got heavier. "Mom, please. The European scouts were at the game. This could be my big break. If this leaks..." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let them drag me out like a trespasser," I said. "The letters are sent. The audit request is with the club. You have 30 days to respond. After that, we file in civil court and notify the league compliance officer in writing." I hung up before either of them could answer. The next 3 days were quiet on the surface. I went to the grocery store, bought real food for the first time in months. Fresh vegetables, actual steak, a bottle of decent wine. I paid cash, no more watching the balance like a hawk. On day 4, the club's general counsel called. Mrs. Harlan, this is Richard Lang from FC Midwest. We received your notice regarding certain loan documents. We'd like to resolve this discreetly. I put him on speaker while I folded laundry. Discreetly works for me, Mr. Lang. Provided the club repays the $41,000 principal plus accrued interest and confirms in writing that the signatures were not authorized by me. He cleared his throat. There may have been administrative oversights. Your son indicated the funds were family gifts. My son indicated a lot of things, I said. My bank records indicate otherwise. I have the original wire memos that say repayable family loan. If the club prefers to handle this through the league's financial oversight committee, I'm happy to provide the full file. A long pause. We can wire the funds by close of business tomorrow. Full amount plus 8% interest, in exchange for a confidentiality agreement and a release. No confidentiality on the forgery issue, I replied. I will not sign anything that prevents me from reporting suspected fraud, but I will agree not to discuss the repayment publicly if the wire clears and the club issues a corrected internal memo. He agreed faster than I expected. By Friday afternoon, $43,872 landed in my new recovery account, the first real money I'd seen returned in 9 years. I transferred $5,000 immediately into a high-yield savings account labeled Oregon Fund. Then I sat down and wrote the next letter, this one to the league office, attaching the club's repayment confirmation and requesting a formal review of Tyler's player contract filings for the years he listed me as a paid consultant without my knowledge or compensation. I copied Elena and Daniel. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was Tyler's agent. Mrs. Harlan, we need to talk damage control. The scouts are asking questions. There's chatter about financial irregularities. If this blows up, Tyler loses the Dortmund trial next month. I looked out my kitchen window at the maple tree Frank and I planted the year Tyler was born. It was taller than the house now. Mr. Keller, your client had 9 years to treat me like family instead of an ATM. He chose the tunnel and the security guards. Now he can live with the consequences. Tell the scouts whatever you need to tell them, but if they ask about the $187,400, I'll be happy to provide the records. He tried the sympathy angle. He's your son. Blood. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything for 9 years, I said. Now it means he owes me $143,528 plus interest and legal fees. When that balance reaches zero, we can discuss what blood means. I hung up. The next morning, a process server knocked on my door. Tyler and Brooke had filed a motion claiming I was mentally unfit and seeking a temporary restraining order to block any further harassment of their financial affairs. Attached was an affidavit from Brooke stating I had shown increasing paranoia and confusion and had abandoned my role as a supportive mother. I read it twice, then called Elena. She laughed once, short and sharp. They just handed us Exhibit A for our counter motion. We file today. Motion to dismiss, request for sanctions, and we attach the stadium footage plus every bank record. This will not end well for them. I spent the afternoon with Daniel going through the tax filings line by line. We found 3 years where Tyler had deducted consulting fees paid to me that never existed. Total improper deductions, $27,600. Enough to trigger an audit if the IRS cared to look. I cared. We sent the tip package that same day. Anonymous, professional, complete with supporting documentation. By the end of the week, the club had repaid their portion in full. The league compliance officer acknowledged receipt of my file and opened a quiet review. And Tyler's agent left a voicemail saying the Dortmund trial invite had been postponed pending further review. I sat on my back porch that Friday night with a glass of the wine I'd bought with my own reclaimed money and watched the sunset. The house was quiet. No frantic texts asking for emergency wires, no guilt trips about family supporting family, just the sound of crickets and the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. I raised the glass toward the maple tree. Frank, honey, I think we just started getting our life back. Inside, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Probably Tyler or Brooke trying a new line. I let it ring. The recovery account now stood at $48,312. We were only getting started. The Monday after the club wired the money, Elena Vargas's office smelled like fresh coffee and printer toner. I sat across from her in Daniel Park with a new stack of documents, the club's repayment confirmation, the league's acknowledgement letter, and the motion Tyler and Brooke had filed claiming I was mentally unfit. Elena slid a fresh motion across the table. We're filing this today. Counter motion to dismiss their TRO, request for sanctions against them for frivolous filing, and we attach the stadium security footage, the full bank ledger, and the 2 forged loan documents. We also include a sworn affidavit from the club's general counsel confirming the signatures were not authorized. Daniel tapped his laptop. I've flagged the improper Schedule C deductions for the IRS. They usually move slow, but when a taxpayer tips them with complete records and a clear paper trail, they tend to open a file within weeks. We're looking at potential back taxes, penalties, and interest on $27,600 in false deductions. That alone could exceed $40,000 once they finish. I nodded once. Good. What about freezing assets? Elena smiled the way a surgeon smiles before making the first cut. We're requesting a temporary asset freeze on any joint accounts or property purchased with your funds. The condo is in both their names, but we can argue it was funded primarily by your undocumented loans. Judge Rosenthal hears these elder financial cases. She doesn't like when adult children treat their parents like walking ATMs and then cry confusion when the money stops. I signed the new filings with the same pen I used to sign the original demand letters. No shaking hands, no second thoughts. That afternoon, I drove to the bank where I had maintained the old joint account Tyler still had access to, the one I had never closed because I kept hoping he would grow up. I sat down with the branch manager, Mr. Ellison, the same man who had processed dozens of my wires over the years. I need to close this account and open a new one in my name only, I said, and I want a full transaction history for the last 10 years. Mr. Ellison looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Harlan, your son has been making small withdrawals. Nothing large, but show me. He printed the last 90 days. 3 withdrawals totaling $2,840. One labeled Emergency Rent Assistance, another Medical Copay, the last one simply Family Support. All processed after the stadium incident. I slid the printout back. Those were not authorized. I want them reversed if possible. If not, they become part of the civil judgment. He nodded quickly. We can flag the account and freeze further activity pending legal clarification. By the time I left the bank, the old account was closed. The new recovery account now held the club repayment and sat at $51,152. I transferred another $8,000 into the Oregon Fund. The balance ticked upward like a heartbeat finally steadying after years of arrhythmia. The hearing for the temporary restraining order was scheduled for the following Wednesday. I flew back to the city the night before, stayed in the same modest hotel, and met Elena and Daniel for breakfast at 7 a.m. Tyler and Brooke arrived at the courthouse with their attorney, a slick young man in a suit that cost more than my monthly pension. They looked tired. Brooke's influencer glow had faded into dark circles and too much concealer. Tyler kept glancing at his phone, probably waiting for the league to call with good news that wasn't coming. Judge Rosenthal entered exactly on time. She was in her late 50s, silver hair, the kind of judge who had seen every version of family greed. Counsel for Tyler spoke first. Your Honor, my clients are concerned for Mrs. Harlan's mental state. She has abruptly cut off all support, filed aggressive lawsuits, and is attempting to destroy her son's career over what was always intended as unconditional family assistance. Elena stood. Your Honor, what my client provided was not unconditional assistance. It was 9 years of documented loans totaling $187,400. We have promissory notes, wire memos, and bank records. 2 of those loans were formalized with the club and bear forged signatures. We also have video evidence of Mrs. Harlan being physically removed from the stadium on national television after her daughter-in-law publicly disavowed her as family. This is not paranoia. This is a parent finally enforcing boundaries after years of financial exploitation. The judge asked to see the footage. The courtroom screen lit up. There I was again, scarf around my neck, ticket in hand, security escorting me out while Brooke's voice carried over the stadium speakers. The camera caught Tyler looking straight at me, then turning away. Judge Rosenthal's face didn't change, but her voice did. "Mr. Harlan, is that you in the video?" Tyler swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you allowed security to remove your mother from the building?" She showed up unannounced. We had a plan for the suite. It was a big night." The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Harlan, did you receive any invitation or prior notice that you were not welcome?" "No, Your Honor. I bought my own ticket. I flew 2,300 miles. I was there to support my son." The judge turned back to Tyler's attorney. "Motion for temporary restraining order is denied. Further, the court finds the filing borderline frivolous. Sanctions will be considered at the final hearing. Mrs. Harlan's request for a preliminary asset freeze on any property or accounts traceable to her funds is granted pending full discovery." Brooke made a small sound like a gasp. Tyler stared at the table. Elena wasn't finished. "Your Honor, we also request expedited discovery on all financial records, including tax returns for the years Mr. Harlan claimed consulting income from my client that was never paid." Granted. We walked out of the courtroom into the marble hallway. Tyler caught up to me before security could intervene. "Mom, please, this is insane. You're going to bankrupt us." I stopped and looked at him. Really looked. The boy I had driven to every practice. The young man I had believed in when no one else did. He looked smaller now. "You bankrupted me first," I said quietly. 9 years of canned soup and canceled doctor visits so you could live the dream. I never asked for thanks. I asked for respect. You gave me security guards and a public humiliation on national TV. Now the ledger is coming due. Brooke stepped forward, eyes wet but hard. "You're really doing this to your own son? Over money?" "Over money I earned and you spent," I answered. "Over signatures you forged. Over a life I put on hold so you could post perfect pictures." The court will decide how much respect costs. I suggest you start calculating. Their attorney pulled them away before it got uglier. Elena touched my elbow. "That went better than expected. The asset freeze buys us time. Discovery will take weeks, but the numbers are on our side." I flew home that night. The next morning, I received confirmation that the IRS had opened a review file on Tyler's returns. A polite letter arrived by certified mail requesting additional documentation for the consulting income claimed in tax years 2022 through 2024. I forwarded it to Elena without comment. Over the following 3 weeks, the discovery process began in earnest. Bank subpoenas, tax records, club financials. Every wire I had ever sent was now evidence. Daniel's forensic report grew to 47 pages. It showed a clear pattern. Tyler and Brooke treating my account as an extension of theirs, with no repayment schedule, no gratitude, and increasing aggression when the flow slowed. One afternoon, Elena called. The condo appraisal came back. Purchased with $19,000 of your money plus mortgage payments, partially covered by club bonuses that were only possible because of your earlier loans. We can argue equitable lien. They may have to sell or refinance to satisfy judgment. I sat on my back porch again, watching the maple trees sway in the breeze. "Good," I said. "Let them feel what it's like when the ground shifts under their feet." By the end of the month, the recovery account stood at $94,600. Club repayment, reversed unauthorized withdrawals, and the first small settlement offer from Tyler's agent that we rejected outright. I opened a new folder on my laptop labeled Oregon Closing. Inside it was a listing for a modest two-bedroom cottage on the coast near Lincoln City. Ocean view, small garden, quiet neighbors. The kind of place Frank and I had dreamed about before life got loud with soccer dreams that weren't ours. I transferred another $15,000 into the fund. The balance kept climbing, and for the first time in 9 years, so did my hope. The real hearing, the one that would decide the full judgment, was set for 6 weeks out. Tyler's European opportunity had gone silent. The league review was still open. Brooks' brand deals had started drying up after the stadium clip went viral in certain circles. I didn't gloat. I didn't call them. I simply kept the record straight and the boundaries firm. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about balance. And the scales were finally tipping in the right direction. The 6 weeks between the preliminary hearing and the full civil trial passed like a slow, deliberate audit. Every number checked twice, every lie documented in black and white. I spent most of it at home in Ohio, tending the garden I had neglected for years while Tyler chased balls across the country. I planted tomatoes, pulled weeds, and watched the maple tree drop its first red leaves of fall. Each evening I reviewed the latest discovery documents Elena emailed. Each morning, I transferred another slice of reclaimed money into the Oregon Fund. The balance now sat at $127,400, almost enough for the cottage down payment. Tyler and Brooke tried everything in those weeks. Late-night voicemails alternating between apology and accusation. A flowers and card delivery that I refused at the door. One Sunday, Brooke even showed up unannounced at my house with a bakery box and the same polished smile she'd used on the sideline reporter. I opened the door only far enough to see her face. "Maggie, we need to talk like family," she said, voice soft, eyes calculating. "Tyler's agent says the league might drop the review if we all just move past this. We can set up a repayment plan, small monthly amounts. Whatever you want." I looked at the pink box in her hands, probably the same expensive pastries she used to charge to my old account. "The court will decide the repayment plan, Brooke, not you. And family doesn't forge signatures or call someone a delusional fan on national television. You have lawyers. Use them." She tried tears next. "You're really going to destroy your only son over money? After everything he's accomplished?" Everything he accomplished was built on $187,400 of my money and 9 years of my life, I answered. "The destruction started the night you told the world I wasn't family. Now we're just finishing the paperwork." I closed the door. She stood on the porch for another minute, then left. I watched through the window as she threw the bakery box into the trash can with more force than necessary. The day of the full hearing arrived cold and clear. I wore the same black suit I'd bought for Frank's funeral, the only formal thing I still owned that hadn't been sacrificed for Tyler's career. Elena met me outside the courthouse. Daniel carried 3 thick binders of exhibits. Inside, the gallery was nearly empty. No press, we had kept the filings quiet. Tyler and Brooke sat at their table with their attorney, both looking thinner, older. Tyler's knee bounced under the table. Brooke kept checking her phone, probably waiting for brand sponsors who no longer called. Judge Rosenthal entered and wasted no time. "We are here on Mrs. Harlan's complaint for recovery of funds, conversion, unjust enrichment, and related fraud claims. Mrs. Vargas, you may proceed." Elena stood and laid out the case like a ledger coming due. She walked the judge through every wire transfer, every promissory note Tyler had signed and then ignored, every email where he promised repayment as soon as the next contract hits. She played the stadium footage again, this time with enhanced audio so Brooke's exact words rang clear through the courtroom. "Oh, that old woman? She's not family anymore. We told security she's a delusional fan." The judge's face remained impassive, but her pen moved steadily across her notepad. Then Elena presented the forged loan documents, side-by-side signatures, handwriting analysis from an expert Daniel had hired. The club's own repayment confirmation admitting the signatures were unauthorized. The tax filing showing $27,600 in phantom consulting income. Tyler's attorney tried to counter. Your Honor, these were informal family arrangements. Mrs. Harlan voluntarily provided the funds. There was never any expectation of repayment. My clients are willing to work out a reasonable schedule now that emotions have cooled. Elena didn't blink. Your Honor, 9 years of bank records show a clear pattern of exploitation, not voluntary gifts. When Mrs. Harlan finally stopped the flow, her son and daughter-in-law responded with public humiliation, forged documents, and a frivolous motion claiming she was mentally unfit. This is textbook elder financial abuse. The judge turned to Tyler. Mr. Harlan, did you sign promissory notes acknowledging these as loans? Tyler cleared his throat. Yes, but it was just paperwork. Mom always said she'd help however she could. And the forged signatures on the club loan agreements? I don't know how those happened. Brooke handled some of the club paperwork. Brooke's head snapped toward him, but she stayed silent. Judge Rosenthal looked at Brooke next. Mrs. Harlan, on the night in question, did you tell a national television crew that your mother-in-law was not family and should be removed from the premises? Brooke's voice came out smaller than her usual influencer tone. It was a stressful night. I misspoke. We were protecting the suite for sponsors. The judge leaned forward slightly. You misspoke on live television in front of millions, while security removed the woman who financed your husband's entire professional career. That is not a misspeak, Mrs. Harlan. That is a choice. The morning session ended with the judge ordering a short recess. Elena, Daniel, and I stepped into a quiet conference room. Elena checked her phone. The league compliance officer just emailed. They've opened a formal investigation into Tyler's contract filings and the club's handling of the loans. Possible sanctions include suspension of eligibility for international transfer. I nodded once. No satisfaction, just the steady click of numbers falling into place. When court resumed, Tyler took the stand. His attorney walked him through a rehearsed story of a struggling young player grateful for his mother's unconditional love. But under Elena's cross-examination, the story cracked. Mr. Harlan, how many times did you promise repayment in writing? Several. And how many times did you actually repay any amount? None, but did you list your mother as a paid consultant on your tax returns for 3 consecutive years without her knowledge or compensation? Tyler shifted. It was an accounting thing, to help with deductions. Elena placed the Schedule C forms on the screen. These are not accounting things, Mr. Harlan. These are false statements to the IRS. My client never received a single dollar of consulting income. You claimed $27,600. That is fraud. Brooke was called next. She tried the tears again, describing how devastating it was to watch me change and withdraw support. Elena played the full sideline clip, then the security footage of me being escorted out while Tyler looked the other way. Mrs. Harlan, did you facilitate the signing of these club loan documents? I helped with club admin sometimes. Did you trace over or copy Mrs. Margaret Harlan's signature without her authorization? Brooke hesitated. It was a busy day. I thought she wouldn't mind. The courtroom stayed silent, except for the scratch of the judge's pen. When it was my turn to testify, I kept it short and procedural. I described the 9 years in plain numbers, the canceled doctor visits, the store-brand meals, the sale of Frank's boat. I described the tunnel, the guards, the words, "not family anymore," broadcast to the nation. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I simply laid out the ledger. Everything I gave was meant to help my son succeed, I said. I never asked for luxury in return. I asked for basic respect. Instead, I received forged documents and public rejection. I am here to reclaim what is legally mine so I can finally live the retirement my husband and I planned before I sacrificed it all. The judge recessed for lunch and returned at 1:30 p.m. with her ruling. After reviewing the evidence, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Margaret Harlan, on all counts. Judgment is entered in the amount of $187,400 principal plus statutory interest at 8% per annum compounded from the date of each transfer, plus $28,500 in attorney fees and costs, plus $15,000 in punitive damages for the pattern of fraud and emotional distress. Total judgment, $241,872 as of today's date. Tyler made a sound like the air had been knocked out of him. The court further imposes an equitable lien on the downtown condominium to the extent of plaintiff's contributions. Defendants shall either satisfy the judgment in full within 60 days or cooperate in the sale or refinance of the property. Any failure to comply will result in contempt proceedings. Brooke started crying for real this time. Loud, messy sobs that echoed off the marble. Tyler sat frozen, staring at the judge as if she had just ended his career in open court. Judge Rosenthal looked directly at them. Mr. and Mrs. Harlan, you are adults. You had 9 years to treat your mother and mother-in-law with dignity instead of as a resource. The law does not require parents to finance their adult children indefinitely. It does require repayment when loans are documented and when fraud is involved. This matter is concluded. We walked out into the hallway. Tyler caught my arm before I reached the elevator. Mom, $241,000? We don't have that. The condo is all we have. The league is investigating. The scouts are gone. What are we supposed to do? I looked at my son, the boy I once carried on my shoulders, the man who had let security drag me away. You do what I did for 9 years, I said quietly. You figure it out. You make choices, you live with the consequences, and the next time someone gives you everything, you treat them like a person, not a bank. Brooke stood a few feet away, mascara running, phone clutched like a lifeline that had finally gone dead. I didn't hug them. I didn't offer comfort. I simply stepped into the elevator with Elena and Daniel. As the doors closed, I heard Brooke's voice break behind us. Ty, what are we going to do now? The elevator descended in silence. When we reached the lobby, Elena shook my hand. You did it, Maggie. The judgment is enforceable immediately. We'll monitor compliance. If they drag their feet, we file for contempt and force the sale. I nodded. Thank you. Both of you. Send me the final invoice. I'll pay it from the recovery account. Outside the courthouse, the air felt sharper, cleaner. I walked 3 blocks to a small cafe, ordered a real sandwich and a cup of coffee, and sat by the window. My phone stayed quiet. No frantic calls, no new excuses. The recovery account now reflected the full judgment amount pending collection. The Oregon Fund sat at $142,000. I opened the real estate app and refreshed the listing for the cottage in Lincoln City. Still available. Ocean view, quiet street, a small garden where I could plant whatever I wanted without checking the price of seeds. I made an appointment to view it the following week. That night, back in my Ohio house, I sat at the kitchen table with one last document, a new will. I left the house to a local youth soccer scholarship in Frank's name. The remaining assets, once collected, would fund college grants for kids whose single parents couldn't afford travel teams. No mention of Tyler. No codicil for future reconciliation. I signed it in front of 2 witnesses at the bank the next morning. Then I booked the flight to Portland. The cottage was even better in person. Small, weathered cedar siding, a deck overlooking the Pacific. The realtor chattered about sunsets and whale watching. I barely heard her. I was already imagining mornings with coffee on that deck. No wires to send, no emergencies to solve. I put in an offer that afternoon. Cash, once the judgment cleared. The sellers accepted within hours. Back in the rental car, I pulled out my phone and recorded a short voice message. Not for sympathy, not for closure, just for the record. Tyler, this is your mother. The court has ruled. The judgment is $241,872. The condo will need to be sold or refinanced to satisfy it. I will not negotiate. I will not forgive the debt. I will not be available for further discussion. You have 60 days. After that, my attorney will enforce the lien. I hope you learn from this. I truly do. But my learning is done. I'm moving on. Do the same. I sent it. Then I blocked both numbers. 3 weeks later, the condo went on the market. Tyler and Brooke moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. The league issued a formal warning and suspended Tyler's eligibility for international transfer for 6 months, pending full compliance review. Brand deals dried up. The influencer life Brooke had built on my dime quietly collapsed. I didn't watch the coverage. I was already packing boxes in Ohio, labeling them for the move west. On the day the moving truck arrived, I stood in the empty living room one last time. The maple tree outside the window glowed red and gold. I touched the trunk the way Frank used to. "We're going home, honey," I whispered. "The real one." The truck pulled away. I followed in my car, the Oregon Fund now covering the full cottage purchase and leaving enough to live simply and well. 6 months after the hearing, I sat on the deck of my new house with a cup of coffee and the morning paper. The Pacific stretched out blue and endless. No phone calls demanding money. No guilt. Just the sound of waves and the cry of gulls. My phone buzzed once. A notification from Elena. Final collection report. The condo had sold. After mortgage payoff and fees, my judgment was satisfied in full. Wire confirmation attached. Total recovered, $243,119, including final interest and costs. I transferred the last amount into the scholarship fund and closed the recovery account. Then I opened a new checking account under my maiden name, Margaret Ellis. No Harlan, no ties, just me. That evening, I walked down to the beach. The sun was setting in streaks of orange and pink. A group of local kids played pickup soccer on the sand, laughing, shouting, no parents hovering with checkbooks. I sat on a driftwood log and watched them until the light faded. For 9 years I had been the walking ATM. Now, I was simply Margaret, free, whole, and finally, after everything, at home. The judgment was final, the money wired, and the condo sold at a loss that wasn't mine to feel. I stood on the deck of the little cedar cottage in Lincoln City and watched the Pacific roll in under a gray December sky. The check from the closing cleared 3 days earlier. My recovery account now sat at zero because every cent had been moved. $243,119 total collected into a new trust account for the Frank Harlan Youth Soccer Scholarship. No more ledger, no more balances to chase. Just the quiet sound of waves and the smell of salt air that Frank and I had planned to share before life took a different route. I had changed my last name back to Ellis at the county clerk's office the week I moved in. Margaret Ellis. 70 years old, retired, and legally unbound from the name that had cost me nearly a decade and most of my savings. The new driver's license arrived in the mail yesterday. I pinned it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. Tyler tried one last time. A certified letter arrived 2 weeks after the sale closed. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper in his handwriting. Mom, the league suspended me for 6 months. No European move. Brooke left last week. Said she didn't sign up for this. The apartment is gone. I'm sleeping on a teammate's couch. I know I screwed up. I was scared. I thought if I kept pushing, everything would keep working the way it always had. I'm sorry about the tunnel. I'm sorry about the signatures. I'm sorry about everything. Can we at least talk? Just once? Tyler. I read it twice, on the deck while the wind tugged at the paper. Then I folded it, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the bottom drawer of the small desk inside. I didn't answer. I didn't block the new address he used. I simply let the silence do the work that 9 years of checks never could. The scholarship fund opened quietly in January. I set it up through the local community foundation so no one would connect it to me. Criteria were simple. Single parents whose kids showed talent in youth soccer but couldn't afford travel, kits, or academy fees. First-year budget, $18,000, enough to help 6 families. The foundation director asked if I wanted my name on the plaque. I told her no. Call it the Frank Ellis Memorial Fund, that's all. I started volunteering at the community soccer fields on Saturdays. Not coaching, my knees were done with that, but handing out water bottles, keeping score, and watching the kids who reminded me of Tyler at 8, before the scouts and the pressure and the slow erosion of everything else. None of them knew who I was. They just called me Miss Maggie. That was enough. One Saturday in late February, the wind was sharp off the ocean. I was packing up the equipment bag when a woman about 40 approached, holding the hand of a skinny 10-year-old boy in a faded club jersey. "Miss Maggie, I'm Carla. My son Diego got one of the scholarships. We wanted to thank you in person." I shook her hand. "No thanks needed. Just watch him run. That's payment enough." Diego grinned up at me, missing one front tooth. "Coach says I have good feet. Like Tyler Harlan when he was little. You ever watch him play?" I smiled, small and steady. "I did. A long time ago." Carla's eyes softened, like she sensed something but didn't push. "Well, thank the fund anyway. Without it, we couldn't have afforded the new cleats or the tournament fees. Diego made the All-Star team last weekend." I handed the boy a fresh water bottle from the cooler. "Then keep working hard. And listen to your mom. She's the real coach here." They walked away across the damp grass. I watched until they disappeared behind the bleachers, then zipped the equipment bag and carried it to my car. No ache in my chest. No what if. Just the clean satisfaction of money finally doing what it should have done years earlier, helping people who couldn't help themselves. Spring came early that year. I painted the cottage trim a soft white, planted lavender and rosemary along the front walk, and bought a used Adirondack chair for the deck. Mornings, I drank coffee and read paperbacks from the little library in town. Afternoons, I walked the beach, collecting shells I had no use for, but liked the weight of in my pocket. Evenings, I sat with the sliding door open and listened to the tide while I balanced the scholarship checkbook. Simple, transparent, every dollar accounted for. Elena called once a month to confirm compliance. The judgment had been paid in full from the condo proceeds. Tyler had filed for bankruptcy protection in March, but the court had ruled my claim non-dischargeable because of the fraud findings. He still owed nothing more. The lien had done its job, but the bankruptcy stayed on his record. The league lifted the suspension after he completed a financial literacy course and community service. He was playing for a lower division club now, making league minimum money, no scouts calling. Brooke had moved back east and changed her last name on social media. I didn't look her up. I didn't need to. One warm evening in June, I was sitting on the deck with a glass of the same decent wine I had bought with the first reclaimed dollars when my phone rang from an unknown Oregon number. I almost let it go to voicemail, then answered. "Margaret Ellis?" "Yes." "This is Coach Ramirez from the Lincoln City Youth League. We got a new player this week. 12-year-old girl, single mom, scholarship kid. She's got speed, but no confidence. I was wondering if you'd be willing to come watch a practice sometime. The kids respond to you. They say you're calm." I smiled at the ocean. "I can do that. Thursday work?" "Thursday's perfect. Thank you, Miss Maggie." I hung up and leaned back in the chair. The sun was sliding toward the horizon, painting the water gold. No one was calling me for rent money. No one was forging my name. No one was telling national television I wasn't family. I was just Miss Maggie now. Volunteer. Fund trustee. Woman who finally got to decide how her days would be spent. 2 weeks later, I drove to the youth fields with a bag of new practice balls I had paid for myself. The girl, her name was Sophia, ran drills with the kind of raw talent that reminded me of Tyler before fear and entitlement took over. After practice, her mother, a tired waitress named Rosa, came over. "Sophia talks about you all the time. Says you don't yell like the other coaches. Just watch and nod. She likes that." I handed Sophia a fresh ball. "Keep your head up when you run. The ball will still be there when you look back." She grinned and ran off to show her friends. Rosa watched her daughter, then looked at me. "I don't know who set up that scholarship, but it saved us. I was about to pull her from the team. Couldn't afford the fees anymore. Now she's smiling again. Whoever did this, they gave her more than soccer. They gave her something to believe in. I didn't tell her it was me. I just said, then make sure she knows it was possible, because someone believed in her mother first. That night I sat on the deck again, a light blanket over my legs, and opened the bottom desk drawer. Tyler's letter was still there, creased from reading. I took it out one last time, read the words slowly, then folded it and slid it into an envelope addressed to his last known address, the one from the bankruptcy filing. Inside the envelope, I placed the letter plus a single sheet of my own stationery. Tyler, the court has closed the case. The money is gone, spent on kids who will never know your name, but will remember that someone gave them a chance without asking for anything back. I am not angry anymore. I am not waiting for an apology that changes the past. I am simply living the life I postponed for 9 years so you could chase yours. If you ever decide to become the man your father hoped you would be, start by paying forward what was never paid back to me. Help someone who can't help you in return. That is the only repayment I will ever accept. I wish you peace. I have found mine. Margaret Ellis. I sealed the envelope, drove to the post office the next morning, and dropped it in the box without hesitation. No return address, no expectation. Then I went home, made a fresh pot of coffee, and sat on the deck to watch the tide come in. The scholarship had already helped 8 families that year. The cottage was paid for, my pension and Social Security covered the simple life I now lived. The ocean never asked me for money. The kids on the field never called me delusional. And the woman in the mirror each morning looked like someone who had finally stopped walking on eggshells. I raised my coffee mug toward the water, the way I used to raise a glass to Frank. We made it, honey. A little later than planned, but we made it. The waves answered with their steady rhythm. And for the first time in decades, I answered back with nothing but silence. The clean, earned silence of a woman who had taken her life back, one documented dollar at a time. No more wires, no more excuses, no more family that treated her like an ATM with feelings. Just Margaret Ellis, on the Oregon coast, watching the sunset with the peace she had paid for in full. And that, after everything, was more than enough. The summer after I mailed the letter, the scholarship fund quietly grew. Word spread through the small coastal soccer community that there was a modest but reliable source of help for single parents whose kids showed promise. I kept my name off every document. The foundation handled applications. I simply reviewed the files once a month, wrote the checks, and showed up at practices when Coach Ramirez asked. Sophia made the regional select team in July. Her mother Rosa brought me a homemade tamale tray wrapped in foil. "For the woman who made this possible," she said. I accepted the food, sat with them on the bleachers, and watched Sophia fly down the wing with the kind of joy Tyler had lost somewhere between the first big check and the last forged signature. No one mentioned my son. No one needed to. By August, the fund had distributed $29,400. 14 kids. 14 families who could keep playing without choosing between rent and cleats. I sat on the deck that evening with the latest statement and felt something close to closure. Not the loud, cinematic kind, but the quiet satisfaction of numbers finally balancing in the right column. Then the phone rang. It was Elena Vargas. Her voice was crisp, professional, the same tone she had used in the courtroom. "Maggie, we have a small complication. Tyler filed a motion to reopen the judgment, claiming newly discovered evidence of your diminished capacity at the time of the original transfers. He attached a letter from a therapist he's been seeing and a statement from Brooke saying you showed signs of confusion during the last 2 years you were sending money." I set the scholarship statement down. The ocean kept moving behind me, indifferent and steady. "On what grounds?" I asked. "Emotional distress, undue influence, the usual last-ditch script. They want the judgment reduced by 60% and the scholarship fund frozen pending review. The hearing is set for September 12th in the original county. You don't have to appear in person, we can handle it remotely, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." I looked at the lavender I had planted along the walkway. It was blooming purple and fragrant in the salt air. File the opposition, I said. Attach every bank record, every promissory note, the stadium footage, the forged loan analysis, and the IRS review confirmation. Also attach the new scholarship distribution reports. Let them explain to the judge why the woman they called delusional is now funding 14 children's dreams with the exact money they claim I was too confused to manage. Elena gave a short laugh. I already started the draft. I just needed your go-ahead. This'll be quick. Their motion is thin. I hung up and walked down to the water's edge. The tide was going out, leaving smooth, wet sand that reflected the sky like glass. I stood there until the sun dropped behind the horizon, then turned back toward the cottage. No panic, no old ache in my chest. Just the calm calculation I had learned in the tunnel that night. Document everything, protect what is yours, and let the paper do the talking. The September 12th hearing lasted 37 minutes by video. I sat at my kitchen table in a clean white blouse, laptop angled so the judge could see the ocean through the sliding door behind me. Tyler appeared from a small, dim apartment. His face was gaunt. Brooke was not on the screen. Their new attorney, a different one, cheaper, argued that I had been under severe emotional strain after Frank's death, and that the transfers were the product of guilt-driven generosity rather than voluntary loans. He claimed the scholarship fund proved I was still unstable and punishing my only child. Elena spoke next. She placed the stadium clip on screen again. Brooke's voice filled the room once more. Oh, that old woman? She's not family anymore. Then she laid out the timeline. 9 years of documented loans, 0 repayments until the court forced the issue, forged signatures, false tax deductions. Finally, she displayed the scholarship reports. Exact amounts, recipient families, kids' names redacted for privacy. Your Honor, Elena said, my client is not unstable. She is the only stable party in this entire matter. While her son and daughter-in-law were spending her retirement on condos and veneers, she was quietly building something that outlasts both of them. The motion to reopen is without merit and should be denied with prejudice. Judge Rosenthal did not take long. Motion denied. The original judgment stands in full. Any further attempts to relitigate this matter without clear and convincing new evidence will result in sanctions against counsel and the movants personally. Mrs. Ellis, formerly Harlan, is under no obligation to provide additional support, emotional or financial, to adult children who have already received more than their legal share. Case closed. The screen went black. I closed the laptop, walked to the deck, and poured myself a small glass of wine. The sun was setting again, the same reliable show it had performed every evening since I arrived. I raised the glass toward the water. That's the last time, Frank. No more courtrooms, no more motions, just us and the tide. 2 days later, a final notice arrived from the bankruptcy court. Tyler's discharge had been granted on all dischargeable debts, but my judgment remained intact and had already been satisfied through the condo sale. No further collection necessary. The file was closed. I filed the paper in the bottom drawer next to his letter and never opened it again. October brought the first real rain. I spent the gray days inside, organizing the scholarship files and reading the thank you notes the foundation forwarded. One was from Carla. Diego made the middle school team. He scored his first goal last week and dedicated it to the lady who believes in kids like him. We don't know your name, but we know your heart. Thank you. I pinned it to the refrigerator beside my new driver's license. By Thanksgiving, the fund had helped 21 families. I hosted a small dinner on the deck for Rosa, Carla, and a few other mothers whose kids had received grants. We ate turkey sandwiches and store-bought pie because none of us wanted to cook after long weeks. The kids ran on the beach with a new soccer ball I had bought with fun money. Their laughter mixed with the waves and sounded like something I had once tried to buy for Tyler and never quite managed. After everyone left, I sat alone with the last slice of pie and opened my email. One new message from an unknown address. The subject line read, "Final thank you." Inside was a short note from Tyler. Mom, or Margaret, I guess. I saw the scholarship article in the local paper. They didn't name you, but I knew. 21 kids. That's more than I ever gave back. I'm working 2 jobs now, coaching youth on weekends. The league let me keep playing, but it's lower division, and the pay is barely enough for rent. Brooke is gone for good. I don't blame her. I don't blame you anymore either. I'm sorry. Not because I want anything, just because I finally understand what I took from you. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. No pressure, no asks, just talk. Tyler. I read it 3 times. The waves kept their rhythm outside. No tug in my chest, no sudden rush of forgiveness or rage. Only the steady, earned quiet of a woman who had already decided where her future lived. I hit reply. Tyler, the court closed the case. The scholarship is doing what the money should have done years ago. I am well. I am at peace. I do not need or want further contact. Live your life. Help the kids you coach. Pay forward what was never paid back. That is the only thing left between us. Margaret Ellis. I sent it, then closed the laptop and walked down to the beach. The moon was rising, silver on black water. I stood at the edge where the tide brushed my shoes and spoke to the ocean the way I used to speak to Frank on the boat. It's done. All of it. The ledger is balanced. The name is changed. The money is finally where it belongs. The waves answered with their endless hush. I turned back toward the lights of the cottage, small and warm against the dark. Inside, the refrigerator held the thank you notes and my new license. The desk drawer held the old letter and the court papers. The future held nothing but mornings with coffee, afternoons with kids who would never know my full story, and evenings with the Pacific keeping its own clean accounts. No more wires, no more security guards. No more walking on eggshells for people who only called when the balance ran low. Just Margaret Ellis, 70 years old, standing on the Oregon coast with the peace she had fought for, dollar by documented dollar. And that peace, after everything, was the only return on investment that had ever truly mattered. The rain finally eased in early December, leaving the Oregon coast bright and scrubbed clean. I woke before dawn, made coffee in the French press I had bought with the very last reclaimed dollar, and carried the mug out to the deck. The Pacific lay flat and silver under a low winter sun. No wind, just the soft rhythm of small waves and the distant call of gulls. I had turned 71 the week before. No party, no cards from family, just a quiet walk on the beach and a new pair of binoculars so I could watch the gray whales when they passed. The scholarship fund had closed its second year with $47,800 distributed. 29 kids. 29 single parents who no longer had to choose between groceries and grass stains. The foundation sent me a simple card. Because of you, they get to keep playing. I pinned it next to the others on the refrigerator and never took it down. Tyler's last email had gone unanswered for 4 months. I kept the address unblocked in case of true emergency, but none came. The lower division club he played for posted occasional highlights on social media. He looked thinner, older, the easy smile gone. I scrolled past without feeling. The ledger was closed. The name was changed. The woman in the mirror each morning answered only to Margaret Ellis. One Tuesday morning in mid-December, the phone rang while I was watering the rosemary. Coach Ramirez's voice carried the crisp energy of someone who had already been on the field for hours. Miss Maggie, we've got the holiday tournament this weekend. Sophia made captain. The girls want you there for the final if we reach it. Think you could come? I smiled at the herb pots. I'll be there, front row, no charge for the cheering section. Saturday arrived cold but clear. I drove to the fields wearing the plain navy jacket I had bought in town. No team colors, no old scarf, nothing that tied me to the past. The bleachers were half full with parents stamping their feet and kids in bright jerseys running drills. Sophia spotted me first and waved both arms like I was the coach herself. I waved back, simple and steady. The final was tight. Lincoln City Youth versus a traveling team from Portland. Sophia scored in the 37th minute with a clean strike that reminded me of Tyler at his best, before the money changed the stakes. The parents roared. I stayed seated, hands in my lap, letting the moment belong to the girl and her mother. When the final whistle blew and the girls piled on Sophia in celebration, Rosa found me on the bleachers and hugged me hard enough to wrinkle the jacket. "She did it because she knew someone believed she could," Rosa said, eyes shining. "Thank you, Miss Maggie, for all of it." I patted her back once. "She did it because she worked for it. I just made sure the field stayed open." That night I sat on the deck again, wrapped in the thick blanket I had ordered from the local quilt shop. The tournament trophy, a cheap plastic cup the girls had painted themselves, sat on the small table beside me. Sophia had insisted I keep it, for the lady who never yells. I ran my thumb over the crooked letters and felt the same clean satisfaction I had felt the day the final wire cleared. The phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. "This is Tyler. I saw the local news clip about the tournament. Sophia looks like she has your steadiness. I'm proud of the work you're doing. I'm coaching U10s now. No scouts, no contracts, just kids and grass. I think I finally get it. No ask. Just wanted you to know I'm trying." I read it twice. The ocean kept its rhythm. No pull in my chest. No old reflex to fix anything. I typed a short reply and sent it before I could overthink. "Tyler, I'm glad you're coaching. Kids need steady adults more than they need stars. Keep showing up for them. That's enough. Margaret Ellis." I set the phone down and never checked for a reply. Christmas morning, I woke to frost on the deck railing. I made oatmeal with real maple syrup, the expensive kind I no longer had to justify, and opened the single gift I had bought myself, a simple wooden frame for the first scholarship thank you note. I hung it on the wall where the morning light would hit it every day. At noon, I drove to the community center where the foundation hosted a modest holiday lunch for the scholarship families. 29 kids, their mothers, a few fathers, and Coach Ramirez. We ate ham, mashed potatoes, and too much pie. The children ran between tables with new soccer balls I had quietly funded. No one called me by my old name. No one asked for anything except seconds on dessert. Carla stood at the end of the meal and raised a plastic cup of sparkling cider. "To the quiet lady who made this possible. We don't know your whole story, but we know you gave these kids a chance without asking for anything back. That's rarer than you think." The room clapped. I nodded once, cheeks warm, and let the moment pass without speech. Later, as the sun dropped behind the coastal hills, I walked the short trail back to the cottage alone. The air smelled of pine and salt, my breath fogged in the cold. For the first time in decades, there was no mental ledger running in the background, no tally of wires sent, no worry about the next emergency call, no calculation of how much I could afford to give before I broke. I stopped at the overlook where the trail met the beach and spoke to the horizon the way I used to speak to Frank on the boat. "It's finished, honey. The money is gone where it belongs. The name is mine again. The days are quiet and full. I kept the promise I made the night they dragged me out of that tunnel. I took my life back, one documented dollar at a time." The wind carried the words away across the water. I turned toward home. The cottage lights glowed soft gold through the windows. Inside waited the quilted blanket, the French press, the wall of thank you notes, and the quiet knowledge that I owed no one anything except the steady kindness I now chose to give. No more walking ATM. No more security guards or sideline smiles that cut like glass. No more sacrificing the retirement Frank and I had earned so our son could chase a dream that ultimately devoured everything except the debt. Just Margaret Ellis on the Oregon coast, 71 years old, with salt in her hair and peace in her ledger. The ocean kept its own clean accounts. And for the first time in my life, so did I. The ocean kept its own clean accounts. And for the first time in my life, so did I. That Christmas night, I sat on the deck until the stars came out, the quilted blanket pulled tight around my shoulders, the plastic tournament trophy still on the small table beside me. The air was sharp with cold, but it felt honest. No hidden costs. No quiet calculations of how much I could spare before the next call came. Just the steady hush of waves and the low hum of the space heater I had bought with my own reclaimed money. I slept without dreams for the first time in years. January brought the kind of gray drizzle that keeps most people indoors. I spent the days sorting the last of the scholarship files, writing the quarterly report for the foundation, and walking the beach when the rain eased. The fund now stood at $52,300 for the new year. 34 families had applied. I approved every one that met the simple criteria. Single parent, child with talent, no other way to keep playing. No drama, no strings, just grass, goals, and the chance to stay on the field. One rainy Thursday afternoon, Coach Ramirez stopped by the cottage with a manila envelope. "Miss Maggie, the girls made you something." Inside was a handmade card covered in crooked signatures and stick figure soccer players. Sophia had written in careful block letters at the bottom, "To the lady who never yells and always shows up. You made us believe we belong here." The other girls had added their names and tiny soccer balls. I pinned the card on the refrigerator next to the others and felt the same quiet click I had felt the day the final judgment cleared. Something heavy finally settling into its proper place. February brought the first clear stretch of weather. I drove to the community fields early one Saturday and watched the U12 girls run drills. Sophia spotted me and ran over, cleats clacking on the pavement. "Miss Maggie, we're playing in the state cup next month. Coach says if we win our group, I get to keep the captain band all season. Will you come?" I nodded. "Front row, same as always." She grinned, missing nothing now, and sprinted back to her teammates. I stayed on the sideline until the session ended, handing out water bottles and saying little. The mothers waved. A few stopped to thank me again. I accepted their words the way I accepted the tide. Steady, expected, and belonging to no one in particular. That evening I sat on the deck with a cup of tea and opened the single piece of mail that had arrived. A plain white envelope, no return address, postmarked from the Midwest. Inside was a short note in Tyler's handwriting. Margaret. I saw the scholarship numbers in the foundation newsletter. 34 kids this year. That's more than I ever scored in a season. I'm still coaching U10s. One of the boys reminds me of me at that age. All speed and no fear. I'm trying to teach him the parts I missed. No asks, just wanted you to know the money went to the right place. I'm sorry for all of it. Tyler. I read it once, folded the paper neatly, and placed it in the bottom drawer with the others. No reply, no ache. The ledger had been balanced in court and in life. Whatever came next for my son was his to write. Mine was already written in salt air, thank you cards, and the sound of cleats on wet grass. March brought the state cup. I drove to the bigger fields 2 towns over and sat in the front row as promised. Sophia's team made the final. She scored the winner in the 63rd minute with the same clean strike that had won the holiday tournament. The parents erupted. Rosa hugged me so hard I almost dropped the coffee I was holding. After the medals were handed out, Sophia walked over, still breathing hard, the captain band bright on her arm. She held out a small wooden plaque the girls had made. On it they had burned the words, "For Miss Maggie, the steady one." I took the plaque with both hands. "Thank you. I'll keep it where the light hits it every morning." She grinned, then ran back to her teammates for pictures. I stayed on the bleachers until the crowd thinned, the plaque warm in my lap. That night on the deck, I set the new plaque beside the tournament trophy. The two sat together like bookends, one from the kids who had never taken anything from me, the other a quiet reminder of everything I had finally taken back. April brought longer days and the first whales of the season. I stood on the overlook with the new binoculars and watched a mother and calf breach in the distance. The sight filled something in me that 9 years of wires had never touched. The scholarship fund hit $68,000 by the end of the month. 41 families helped. The foundation director called to say they were expanding the program because of the steady donations. I told her to keep my name off every press release. "Just keep the fields open," I said. That's all I ever wanted. One warm evening in late April, I was watering the lavender when my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go, then answered. Margaret Ellis? A woman's voice, hesitant but clear. This is Carla, Diego's mom. I just wanted to tell you, Diego got a full scholarship to the regional academy. They saw him at the last tournament. He starts in June. He says he's going to play for the lady who believed in him when no one else did. I set the watering can down. Tell him to play for himself. The belief was already there. I just made sure the grass stayed green. Carla's voice cracked. You don't know what you did for us. For all of us. I do, I said quietly. I lived the other side of it for 9 years. This feels better. We spoke a few more minutes. When I hung up, I stood on the deck and looked out at the water. The sun was setting in long streaks of orange and rose. No ledger running in my head, no phantom ring of a phone demanding more. Just the steady rhythm of waves and the quiet knowledge that every dollar I had fought for was now doing exactly what it should have done from the beginning. May brought the first real heat. I planted tomatoes in the small garden behind the cottage and hung a new wind chime on the porch. The soft metal notes mixed with the surf and sounded like something Frank would have loved. One Saturday I drove to the fields early and found Coach Ramirez setting up cones. He waved me over. Miss Maggie, the league wants to name the new scholarship after you. They don't know your full story, but they know the impact. I shook my head. Call it the Steady Hands Fund or the Frank Ellis Memorial. My name stays off it. I don't need the credit. I just needed the peace. He nodded once, understanding more than most. Fair enough. The kids still call you Miss Maggie. That's enough for them. That afternoon, I sat on the bleachers and watched a new group of 8-year-olds chase a ball across the grass. One little girl with pigtails reminded me of myself at that age, determined, quiet, already calculating the next move. Her mother stood on the sideline, tired but smiling. I handed her a water bottle without being asked. Thank you, she said, for everything. I nodded. Keep her on the field. That's all that matters. The sun dipped lower. The kids kept running. No one asked me for money. No one called me delusional. No one dragged me out of any tunnel. I was simply Miss Maggie. Volunteer. Fund trustee. Woman who had walked through fire, balanced the books, and come out the other side with salt in her hair and peace in her heart. The ocean kept rolling in, steady and clean. And I kept sitting there, watching the kids play, knowing the only debt left in my life was the gentle one I now chose to pay forward. One quiet, documented act of belief at a time. No more walking ATM. No more security guards. No more family that measured love in wire transfers. Just Margaret Ellis on the Oregon coast, 71 years young, with the tide as her only ledger and the laughter of children as her only return. And that, after everything, was more than enough. It was finally, completely mine.